Oh,
Hurry.
get those.
Yeah,
You got to get the belt.
go get it, baby. We can't. It's up there on the table. Can't talk wrestling without the belt now.
Now you got to have a belt if you want to talk wrestling, man. So I want to ask you. A lot of people don't know. I don't think about you and I had kind of connected on a lot of different levels. But one thing we found out about a while back was we're both wrestling fans, and I don't know if we ever really talked a whole lot about that, like on a live stream or whatever. But I guess I wanted to ask you first. What got you into wrestling? Like, what was the real catalyst, if you will, to get you into wrestling? Because you're born and raised right in Georgia.
Born and raised in Georgia. Been a wrestling fan well as long as I can remember. My grandma always told me that it was genetic because her father, my great granddad, would sit on the edge of his faux leather recliner, shake his fist at the TV at they were up in Tennessee, so they would watch all the Memphis wrestling, and Tojo Yamamoto was like the big heel of the territory, and he would just infuriate my great granddad. So she says it's genetic. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but it's okay. It's all right, buddy. But yeah, that's it, man. I've kind of drifted away a little bit with the newer product because I'll be honest with you, it's a little too cartoonish for me, at least on the WWE side. I do like to watch AEW, but man, I've got the network, so I can go back to the Attitude Era. That's my favorite time period, and rewatch all that stuff all over again.
So, it was your great grandfather to your grandmother to you. Obviously, you have a heritage, let's say, of that. Do you remember some of their favorite wrestlers, or do you remember them talking about? I know you talked about Yamamoto as a heel, but do you remember any of the people they liked growing up? While you were growing up, you saw they were really into certain wrestlers or certain type of rivalries or whatever?
Well, yeah, I mean, growing up in Georgia, it was Georgia Championship Wrestling every Saturday night, 6:05, and my grandmother was a big Wildfire Tommy Rich fan. So,
wow.
that's just that was her guy. And of course, he would have his knockdown dragouts, but I've always been a Ric Flair guy myself. It's probably
now Ric Flair. He's from North Carolina, right?
Well, that's where he hails from. I think he was born in, I think Michigan, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, he hails from North Carolina, Charlotte. Matter of fact, Jason, that was the last time I ever got a whipping. Do you remember your last whipping? I ain't talking about.
I had so many of them. I lose track because my dad was not scared to lay down a smackdown.
Well, I was, I grew up in a single parent home. My mother, primarily raised me. I would visit my dad on every other weekend, but my mother gave me my last beating at 16 years old because she got tired of me wooing all the time. All right. So apparently this one time, I got her at the wrong time. She's cutting up some vegetables or something on a chopping block. And I did the woo, and she looked at me and said, "If you do that one more time, then I'm going to hit you with the first thing I can get my hands on." And I, at 16 years old, and being bigger than my mom, got right in her face, and I went, "Woo!" And she proceeded to take that chopping block that she was cutting vegetables on and swing it I mean, Mark McGuire and Sammy Sosa style. And that was the last time that I ever wooed my mom ever again. I promise you.
Oh my gosh, that is epic,
huge
dude.
Ric Flair mark. Huge Ric Flair mark, man. Huge. Kiss stealing, wheeling, dealing.
Now, you know me. When I was growing up, Ric Flair was not on the radar because, you know, being in Indiana, we didn't really get, you know, WCW or whatever it turned out to be before that. I can't remember exactly the territory there, but once we got TBS or whatever, we'd get it on, you know. So, but like the early '80s, you know, it was all WWF type stuff. It might not have been WWE. I think it was back then like WWF or something like that or whatever. And so, you know, that was our first introduction to a lot of that, you know, a lot of the wrestling, you know, and we had wrestling around Indiana because I remember people talking about like wrestling, but I never went to any matches when they were like more local stuff. And then, but you know, one of the things is I'll never forget to talk about your Ric Flair. I remember the first time I remember seeing him. He came out. He was still on WCW. This is before he found his way on to WWE or WWF at the time. He came out. He had a blue robe, and he had his music come out, and he just stood there with his arms out, you know, like this, and just kind of like doing like a little prance, and he like spins around and like, you know, like, and I'm sure that was like for him that's like every day that ends in a Y. Like, but for me as a person who had never seen him before, I was just like completely like in awe of that. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, this guy just walks out, the blonde flowing locks, just comes out with the big ruffles hanging off the sleeves, and just kind of like the chest is kind of half exposed, and just kind of just strutting down the runway there. And I'm like, wow, you know, because in WWF there was nobody like that. Not that I remember. No one really was doing anything like that, you know. You know, and I remember like, you know, being completely caught off guard, and he was like such a great wrestler. You know, I don't think he ever really played a good guy. He never played a baby face. He almost always played a heel. Maybe later on in life he played a baby face, but he mostly like 95% was a heel, you know. And I remember thinking like, this guy, and then I would go back and saw like the stuff that he would do with like the Four Horsemen and Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard, and you know, he had those matches with like Dusty Rhodes and all this stuff. Yeah, I mean, like, you know, you're just like completely caught off guard at how, I mean, he was so good on the mic. Like, very few guys, I think, have that much self-awareness to be able to sell themselves that way. Well, Dusty Rhodes was good like that too, but he didn't have the same kind of ring presence that Flair did.
He didn't have the same rap either. You know, Ric Flair was telling you all about how much money he had and how many women he was with last night, and Dusty Rhodes was the son of a plumber, if you will, baby. So yeah, I mean, he was the working man's rap. So now, you know, Ric Flair was in a bad plane crash. I think it was maybe mid 70s, 75, and broke his back and took a long time to come back. And I think he was babyface when he came back for a short time. But you're right. Some people just were born to be a bad guy. And Ric Flair was born to be a bad guy because he was good. He could talk, and he let you know it. And he was better than you, and you knew it, and there was nothing you could do about it.
Right. Let me ask you this: talking about somebody who's just so good as a heel, and all your wrestling watching through all the different promotions or whatever, who in your mind, who was the worst mistake who ever went from heel to babyface or babyface to a heel that you were like, this does not work? Like, you made a mistake. You should have never did that. You should have stuck with what you know. Have you ever felt like there was ever a person who really stumbled and probably shouldn't have did that? Off the top of your head, like,
that's a great question, man. Yeah. That's a great question. I mean, I can think of a couple of folks that I wish would have gone from one to the other that never did, like a Cena. Like I always wanted Cena to, because to me, if you can do both, that kind of separates the guys that were good from the guys that were great.
Yeah,
Stone Cold Steve Austin. Stone Cold Steve Austin comes to mind. I mean, when they did the WCW invasion back in 01, he went heel and joined, the WCW side, and it just didn't work. Nobody wants to boo Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Right.
They want to see it. They want to see him come out. They want to see him flip the bird. They want to see him show a couple beers and somebody with a stunner, and they want to explode when that happens. Nobody wants to boo Stone Cold.
Right.
So that's one good example that comes to mind. Sting never went heel. Ricky Steamboat never went heel. They were baby faces their whole.
Tito Santana never went heel, I don't think. Yeah. Jimmy the Superfly Snuka never went heel, to my knowledge.
Not in the ring anyway.
Huh?
Said not in the ring anyway. There's
no.
There's
not real. Yeah, not in the kayfabe wrestling world, but in real life, right. he apparently was not a good person, to say the least.
Yeah.
Like I think I don't watch the modern product much anymore when it comes to WWE. I'll catch a SmackDown a little bit here and there because I can watch it for free on Fox on Friday nights or whatever. But the thing they're doing recently, I don't know if you caught any of this because I'm not like religious in watching it, is that Rey Mysterio has never been a heel ever. And he has been doing some very heelish things over the last couple of months. And I do not like that. I don't know what they're thinking they're doing with his character, but kind of like you were saying with like Sting and a few other like guys that has been decades. Like, no, they might have changed their gimmick up a little bit here and there or whatever, but they never changed their babyface run or heel run or whatever. And like Rey Mysterio, always like the beacon of positivity, just being the little guy out there and always going against everybody who was bigger than him, Right. And now he's doing this kind of like, and I mean, he hasn't went like fully heel, but he's doing things that you would see heels do. And it's like this weird thing. And I don't like it. And I'm like, what is they doing with him? Like, don't let him at his end of his career, like in his late 40s or whatever he's at now, to like do. I just don't like that. I'm like, if you can't think of a better storyline, then pull him off TV for a little bit, and then rethink it out. Don't do what they're doing.
Yeah, that's why I'm becoming so disenchanted with the current product, Jason, is because they can't. Their storytelling is so. One of the things that I've always loved about wrestling is the opportunity to suspend your disbelief.
Yes.
Like where you can say, you know what, I'm going to get lost in this for an hour or two tonight, and I know up here that it's not legit, not a real fight. I mean, heck, these guys are punching each other 10 times in the corner, but there's no welts, there's no knots popping up on people's heads, there's no bloody noses. But you know what? I'm gonna buy into it. I can't suspend my disbelief. It's just getting so ridiculous these days. It really is. But yeah, I agree about Mysterio. I mean, he's 5'7". How can you be a heel at 5'7"?
Right.
I mean, everybody is bigger than you are, unless you've got two. Just if they were going to have him have him in a faction or something with like two gigantic guys that would do all of his bidding for him. I mean, I can get that, but I mean that's not his character either. He's to me, he's not a good enough talker to be a heel. I think you've got to be a great talker on the mic to get a heel character over.
Yeah,
unless you're the size of Braun Strowman, or somebody big like that.
Right, where you can just go roar, and that's all it takes.
Right.
Yeah. So kind of. I like this, like where I'm able to do this with you because we're on the same page. So talking about a great heel who's not a great talker, that's when they get a great heel manager. Wouldn't you agree?
Exactly.
So if you're a babyface, a lot of times babyfaces don't have managers. Not always, but it's not as common. You see it, but managers are usually in the area for heels. You know, so the Jimmy Hart, Mouth of the South, Bobby the Brain Heenan, Mr. Fuji, Classy Freddie Blassie, Sensational Sherry. You know, they all go down the list. You know, Luna, all this kind of stuff.
Jim Cornette.
Jim Cornette, tennis racket and all. I mean, you know, so a lot of times they would get the talent over because they might not be able to do the ring stuff anymore, or they never did, but they were just great talkers. And they were able to get people over by just like saying certain things, you know, and they would already have the crowd popping before they even walked in the ring. You know, they would cut a promo walking up to the ring, and people would be already like livid, you know. And I think that a lot of times people don't put a lot of, you know, you don't see that as much anymore. Now you don't see managers hardly ever. I can't think of. I mean, AEW does a pretty good job of putting some people with managers actually, because you got Arn Anderson with Cody. You know, and you have Tully Blanchard with FTR. So you do see a little bit of that. But it's not as common. Definitely with WWE, you don't ever see that. I don't see that really with TNA. When I watch that a little bit here and there, I don't really see that too much. But I do think that's a lost art form because, like you said, it goes back to now some of the storylines are so ridiculous that they just go up and just scream in a microphone, or they just kind of like huff and puff, and that's about it. And you don't really care about the character because they're not good on the mic. They might do good in-ring stuff. They might be great athletes, but you can't really get excited because you don't really know what story they're trying to tell.
And that's what made some of those guys that you mentioned, those managers, so great, is that they would talk the people into the building because the people would pay to come see the babyface get their hands on that little scrawny manager, you know?
Right.
And I don't think anybody was better at that than Bobby Heenan. And I guess if I had a Mount Rushmore of managers, it would probably be Jim Cornette. It would be Bobby Heenan. I don't know how you don't. I guess you put Jimmy Hart up there, even though that megaphone and that voice would just grate on your nerves.
He was great with honky tonk, though. He was awesome with honky tonk.
And you know, I'll be honest with you, Jason. I would probably put Paul Heyman on there, but I'm telling you, he's almost hurt himself. To me, he's almost hurt himself with all of his work with like Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns because, guys, the same shtick. It's the same. He's getting out there saying the same stuff all the time. Yeah. And Roman Reigns, he don't need a manager. Brock Lesnar don't need a manager. I mean, I know Brock Lesnar wasn't the greatest on the mic, but, you know, I don't know. I almost think Paul Heyman's kind of hurt his legacy a little bit with some of this more recent stuff he's done. But we didn't talk about Miss Elizabeth. Now, she was a babyface manager.
Yeah. Remember she came out and whooped up on Sherry, Sensational Sherry, when she went back to Randy?
That's right. Broke the Macho King and the Sensational Queen up.
Yeah, she broke that up. Grabbed her by the hair and threw her out of the ring or whatever it was. Yeah, I mean, you know, she was one of the very few, like, you know, and I mean, really, if you think about it, because, you know, they never sexualized Miss Elizabeth. She always came out in really, like, prom dress type things, like elegant dresses for the 80s, of course, you know. And, you know, she's always with respect. And, you know, and even Sensational Sherry, I felt like when they kind of switched up, you know, she was fully clothed, you know, she was a lot more, you know, way more of a heel and way more like a great talker and like just, you know, really kind of, you know, got people to hate her. And it was kind of weird because you had like, and there was other people who did that too, kind of before and maybe after, but they were the ones that kind of stuck in my mind. And then there was like this weird shift during the Attitude Era where the valets, managers, whatever you want to call them, like all of a sudden started missing articles of clothing. They end up getting huge chests. Like they all had to come out looking like Barbie dolls or variations of Barbie dolls. And then there was like simulated sex on screen all of a sudden with like half the characters. And I don't know where the change was, but it was hard to go back to it. I don't know if you can go back to that anymore because so many people don't think of women anymore in that role of the kind of quiet, submissive, you know, valet and you can't get away with sexualizing women like that anymore because people lose their minds on that end. So I don't know what direction you go because, like you said, Sherry was great. Not Sherry. I'm sorry. Miss Elizabeth was great, but I don't know if we go back to that area anymore. What do you think?
No, not to that extent. But you got to look. To me, you got to look at the time period. You know, when it was Miss Elizabeth, when it was Sensational Sherry. You know, you're talking about a time where the was geared towards kids. You know, and then with the '90s, with grunge rock, with ECW, with
that's true.
You know, the internet. You know, kids taste changed, and if WWF was going to keep their audience, you know, they had to do something to, you know, get the attention of the teenagers. And well, I mean, you remember what it was like to be a teenage guy? Remember Sunny?
Oh yeah, Sunny Days.
Sunny was I think she was like the most downloaded on AOL or something back in the day. Just stuff that. I mean, that's where it started. Really, it probably started with her as far as like the Attitude Era, you know, kind of that sexualizing, you know, the women and stuff. So no, I don't. It's never going to go back that direction. Obviously, with kind of the tone of the world today and stuff. But yeah, I don't see it going back that direction. Managers, you know, if you're a good manager, you got to be careful that you don't take all the focus off the talent in the ring too. And I think that's what some of these great ones were sometimes guilty of doing. Is that they'd be the heat seekers instead of the talent in the ring. Like, can you even do you remember who was in the Midnight Express with Jim Cornette?
No, I know who they are, but I can't think of their names. You're right.
Right. I mean, they were great wrestlers.
Was it Barry Windham or something? Was that it? No.
No, it was Beautiful Bobby Eaton.
There is Bobby Eaton. That's right. Was it PJ Harris or Hayes? PJ Hayes?
No, you're thinking about the Fabulous Freebirds.
Oh, okay. Michael P.S. Hayes. Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Yes. And
you're
Terry
right. I'm
Gordy,
sorry.
Terry Bam Bam Gordy, Michael Hayes, Buddy Roberts. That was the Fabulous Freebirds. But the Midnight Express was Dennis Condrey and Beautiful Bobby, and then Dennis left, and Sweet Stan Lane came in and took his place. But see, a lot of folks don't remember that because who was the main event? The main attraction was Jim Cornette. Yeah.
Louisville, Kentucky zone, Jim Cornette.
The Louisville Lip.
Yeah, man, dude. If you ever listen to his podcast, dude, like,
well,
man,
listen,
that dude is like the quintessential angry man sitting on his porch screaming at everybody. Like, he don't like nothing anymore. Like, everything sucks.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't disagree with him on a lot of that stuff, but
sure.
You know, let's just say that we have some differences of opinion, specifically when it comes to religion and things like that. So I mean, we'll leave it at that. But I can take him talking wrestling. I can't take him talking about, you know, things outside of wrestling. So
yeah, if he sticks with wrestling, then it's fine. But unfortunately, he's a loose cannon. So it's like, but to piggyback a little bit back to what you were saying before. Like, do you see anybody like in the last time you've checked around, or the last couple of years or whatever? Do you see anybody that kind of harkens back to a Miss Elizabeth kind of character? I mean, honestly, I can't think of anybody doing anything similar to that anymore. Because all the women now, I feel like the attitude has been changed to women, if they're going to be in wrestling, are wrestling. Yes. Like they're not there just to be the eye candy for the men.
Exactly.
And you kind of think about it. And the weird thing is, and I don't know how I feel about this because it's like it's hypocritical. But again, when I'm watching SmackDown, there's a new character or whatever been introduced. There's a Carmella, and she has a valet, but it's a guy. They call him something else. They call him something else. It's not a valet, but
a sommelier.
Yes. So I was like, now you have a guy doing it, and that's acceptable. The guy is again going up, kind of doing some talking, some smack talking. He's doing some, some barbs and some jabs. He's mixing it in with the women, and it's like, it's kind of weird because
he was in the 6-man last night. He was in the 6-man last night. He teamed up with Sasha and Bianca Belair. It was two of them and the sommelier versus Nia Jax, Shayna Baszler, and Bayley. And he actually went over.
Yes.
Dude, stop! You can't get me started on that, man. Come on now. Is that not the most? To me, listen. If that's gotten her more over than anything she has ever done or ever will do.
Oh my gosh! Everybody's gonna forget about all the times that she's almost ended about 8 women's careers. And and go back to that one scene where she gets smacked on the old butt, and then she just screams out, looks right at the camera, like, "Oh,
dude, that wasn't planned. That's to me the best stuff that happens in wrestling is not planned. I think she legitimately got a stinger on her tailbone, and that's what came out.
Because she probably, I'm sure because it's a G-rated or PG-rated show now, and they don't want to cuss, and so I mean, what are you gonna scream? You can't scream the A word. You might be able to scream butthole. I don't know. So what do you got? That's what you got. That's what you got to work with.
Can you imagine Vince McMahon? Because he's sitting back there on the headsets, right? He's sitting there watching and listening to everything. Damn it! What did she say? My hole. And
then they run into the ground though. That's the problem with WWE. Anytime that anything gets over, like you said, then it turns into a shtick, it turns into a gimmick, it turns into a bit, and then it's no longer interesting or funny, So
exactly, you're right.
And it's like let it go, just let the whole go, let it be what it is, and move on, But so who ended up winning that match then last night? It's Reginald. That's right.
Reginald went over on Nia Jax. Nia Jax beat him up one side and down the other. And then she had scooped up, ready to do, I don't know if she was going to do like a Mark Henry World Strongest Slam type thing, but Sasha came from behind and kicked him, which caused him to fall over on top of Nia and pinned her. And it's ridiculous, but he's gotten over. I can't believe this guy. He's super athletic. I don't know if you've ever paid any attention to him. Get at it. What are you doing? he's gotten over as Carmella's sommelier. The guy's he's super athletic. So I think it's probably because he's another small guy. That's why they have him in the role he's in. But he's getting over.
Yeah, but it's interesting because again, that character 20 years ago is a female. That is not a guy that's gonna come. You're not having dudes come out for women and kind of act, like a manager, kind of like whatever, sommelier or whatever, as whatever you're calling it, and but and that seems to be acceptable and fine. And I'm not here to say one way or the other, but if you have that role reversed, if you have Braun Strowman come out with a little thing, and she's like his little manager or whatever, and she's just out there doing a lot of the same stuff. Is that going to get over? Are people going to be upset about that? Like, oh, why are you doing that? Like, what's her role just for that purpose of just being out there and looking cute or whatever? Like, are we past that now? So I'm always,
right.
and I understand, like you said, it's organic, it's always evolving. I get it, but sometimes, I always wonder, like, how far do we go? Do we come back again? You know what I'm saying?
Right. Well, I mean, I think it has. I mean, think about it. Carmella and Reginald is the modern day Ted DiBiase and Virgil.
That's true. That is true.
But you couldn't get away with that today. You couldn't get away with Ted DiBiase and Virgil today.
No. There almost any of those characters, if you think about all those characters that we grew up watching, you would not be able to get away with like 95% of that anymore. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine? Oh my gosh, they would lose. I mean, WWE was trying to still get away with it up until about a decade ago, which is kind of surprising. They were still using certain characters from certain countries or certain gimmicks that, right now with our environment, there's no way you can get away with that stuff. But they were doing it all the way up to about a decade ago, maybe even 8 years ago. They were still pushing those kind of boundaries. But yeah, you cannot do that anymore. I mean, people who could care less about the product, who care less about what's going on, they're gonna find a reason to have a meltdown and try to bring you down. You know what I'm saying? Like boycott or whatever. But here's the thing, like you were saying, like makes you wonder. Some of the gimmicks. Now I understand some of the, like the whole Virgil thing, like that probably is not gonna fly in no scenario. But you gotta think about somebody like Tatanka. Like he really is Native American. He really is. It's not like he's not dressing up in like red face, dancing around the ring with a full headdress on and a tomahawk or whatever. Like he really is a Native American. Like, do you think that kind of character would be able to be played on TV anymore?
Not in the cancel culture we live in, buddy.
Even though he's Native American and to him is maybe pride to show his people and what he's all about. Like it doesn't matter because other people who aren't even Native American, who aren't even a part of that world, will say that's inappropriate. Like he's being. They're
going to be offended. They're going
to be offended, right? That he's being exploited. He's being exploited. That's what I was looking for. Right. Even though that's not true.
That's right. That's the age of social media. It only takes a small group to make a lot of noise, when it comes to things like that. And there's no way that would be. And maybe we're starting to kind of see a little bit, Jason, why things are not as good as the way we remember them growing up. Maybe they can't be. Maybe they can't be. Do you remember when Sergeant Slaughter went from, waving the American flag and Mr. Desert Storm to like an Iranian sympathizer with Iron Sheik? And talk about like he about got murdered half the time, and that was like 30 years ago. That was back in like the mid '90s. It was right at the start of the freaking war in Iraq. It was 91. It was 91, WrestleMania 7. Yeah, WrestleMania 7 was Hogan and Slaughter because Slaughter had beat. I think Slaughter had won the belt from the Ultimate Warrior at the Royal Rumble, so they built a program with Hogan and Slaughter to go to WrestleMania. But yeah, absolutely, that was. Well done the way they did it, but I don't think you could get away with something like that now. I don't know do you remember a character named Muhammad Hassan?
Yeah, that's more the recent time, right? That's last 10, 12 years.
That's the most recent one I can think of that. His career was essentially ruined because of the gimmick that he was given. Because it was right when all the stuff was happening with Afghanistan and Al Qaeda and beheadings and things like that. And, there was a match with the Undertaker where, he basically held Undertaker's head up and did kind of a slash and had some of his minions come in, and it looked like, what you would expect a beheading type situation to look like, and then you didn't see him after that. He like disappeared.
And the other thing is he wasn't also Arabic. That was the other problem.
He's
He was like,
Italian.
I think he's Italian. I think he's originally or something.
That's right. That's right.
And yeah, and I know, like, I read a story, I read an article, I watched an interview or something. And they said that once the London bombings happened in like 2006 or something or whatever, like that was when they finally pulled it off, because they were like, all right, like, you know, people are not happy about this. It's getting too real. You know, people are starting, you know, and I mean, and like you said, you know, that's true, because, you know, you have people who WWE would play up people's nationalities as either pros or cons, depending on the situation. And then they would sometimes turn them heel. They'd be babyface again, depending on the situation. And, you know, you cannot do that right now, and probably never will. I would be surprised we could ever go back to anything like that. I doubt that would be the case. But like you said earlier, I think it's very true. It's like, you know, that's why the wrestling is so hard to enjoy, because no one can get that kind of heat anymore. That kind of real, authentic, like this disgust, like love to hate, because now it's all based on, you know, PG-13 Disney kind of heat. You know, it's, you know, it's and then like with ridiculous storylines and all that. You know, like right now, like Roman Reigns finally has gotten over as a villain. They've been trying to get him over for like a decade. And, you know, the biggest thing he does is just goes around wrecking people. That's what he does. He just, you know, he just throws people through tables and chairs and ladders and like destroys everybody until he looks into the camera and tells them they're going to kill their fan. They're going to kill his dad. And they're, you know, hope you know, they're talking about KO, talking about Kevin Owens, like, better say bye to your dad because, you know, he's not coming home tonight and all this kind of stuff. And I mean, that's essentially as bad as it can get, you know. But, you know,
and that would have been on, that would probably been on a mid card, you know, back in our time. That would have been on a mid card. Yeah, it's I'm better than you. Well, no, you're not. Yes, I am. Let's get in the ring and I'll prove it. You know, that's not heat to me. That's, you know, that's fake fighting. There's no storylines anymore. The Roman Reigns thing is actually the closest thing to anything interesting to me that I've seen.
And I like it. I'm not talking bad about it, but it is like, that's your biggest type of heat right now. Yep. Is a guy who just goes around wrecking people every week on TV. And, you know, that's fine and that's good, but it's not the same. I don't think it has the same type of outcome that you would expect when you have somebody who really is hated by everybody.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Let's see here. No more.
They didn't turn Roman heel when they should have, when people hated him. They're going to wait till after he gets diagnosed with leukemia and fights to come back. I mean, that's, you know, timing to me is just as important as anything else. And I almost feel like they waited too long. Probably why they never turned Cena heel either. They just, once they waited so long, they just figured he'd be. Just think about it. Do you think, to me, who has been the best baby face and the best heel? Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, by far.
I mean, Hulk Hogan. There was nobody bigger. You know, saying your prayers, taking your vitamins, you know, with the kids and stuff, and then boom, here comes Bash at the Beach in '96. He's the third guy with Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, and now I'm Hollywood Hogan out here making all these movies, making all this money, and now we're fixing to take over the world. I mean, you know, they could have done something like that with Cena easily. But here's what I heard, Jason, and this is kind of telling to me, especially if you're looking back and kind of seeing the way things have shaped up. But what I've heard through podcasts and people telling stories is that they being WWE are not going to let anybody get over to the extent of a Stone Cold or The Rock or John Cena, somebody who can be bigger than the wrestling part, you know, who can go out and make all this noise in Hollywood, in movies and things like that. They're not going to let that happen anymore, because they say nobody's going to be bigger than the company ever again. And I don't know, that to me that just means you're not going to have superstars anymore. You're not going to have superstars.
And I think that you're right. I heard that before too, because then it takes, because they always leave. They always leave for Hollywood. And then their biggest draw is gone, and then they got to beg them to come back to do like one match a year, or like a quick program over the course of like 3 or 4 matches or whatever, try to build towards WrestleMania or whatever the special event is. And I think that's the reason why also I like AEW, is because they don't rely on one guy to do all the heavy lifting. Like if you watch AEW, it is they move the storylines and the characters around enough that you get a little bit of everybody. Like it's not just the same thing rehashed over every week. Like there is literal story progression. I mean, there is story at AEW that has already taken a year to play out. WWE doesn't care about storylines. They don't care about character development. They don't care about the investment. They sometimes do things that don't even make sense. And I'm not talking about this once in a while. We're talking about every week. And it's like their own people have said, like behind closed doors or like off the what's he called? Off the record. There we go. Off the record. That they'll go up there with like a skeleton of an idea of a loose script, and then they just run with it. Hey, what up, Gary? Oh, Gary said you look like Jim the Anvil Neidhart. Dude, that's true. You do kind of look like Jim the Anvil Neidhart. Yeah, stroke of that. Yeah. But AEW, they do not rely on just huge stars. And the other thing is if you follow AEW recently, not only do they try to put one guy above everybody else, they're like sharing the wealth now with NWA and Impact Wrestling, and now New World Japan is involved, and they're using all these other characters and their wrestlers, and it's like this is how good storytelling is being done. I mean, Kenny Omega beat Jon Moxley in basically in a terrible way. Like he used an inanimate object when it's supposed to be a clean fight, right? And then that was back in December. Here we are heading towards March, and they've already wrestled a couple times since then. Like they just wrestled last week together, like in a 3-way tag or whatever it was. And they just keep on building layers and like building stories and stuff, because you're gonna get this big payoff. And it's not just Roman Reigns in every scene going around wrecking people for 2 hours. Like he shows up in the middle or at the beginning, he shows up in the middle, he shows up at the end. It's just like it's a Roman Reigns story, and there's a few matches in between Roman Reigns. Like I love AEW because they're like saying, here's completely different things. And sometimes the stories intermix, which is cool. Sometimes they have different stories working over here that has nothing to do with over here. I just like that.
Well, so you and I we've talked about AEW. All right. So I'm going to give you my pros and cons. All right. Because there are some of both.
Well,
so the pros for AEW to me is that it's not WWE. So it's an alternative, right?
Right. Sure.
I do agree with you. I believe that there are, the storylines tend to be a little bit stronger in AEW. But that leads into a con to me, and that's the YouTube channel, the YouTube show, Being the Elite. I almost feel like if somebody doesn't watch Being the Elite, they miss out on so much stuff on the show. And I think I think they feel like if people are watching Dynamite, then surely they're watching, but they can't assume that, and so they could be losing viewers because they're confused about what's going on because they don't watch, Being the Elite or whatever. Pro, just what you said, they're integrating people from other promotions. I've always wondered why that's not done more often. It used to be done. I can remember back in the 80s, they used to, AWA would have a Mid-South. I mean, they would have like this super card where all these different people for different promotions would have matches and stuff. But like when Kenta showed up on AEW, that was awesome. When Gallows and Anderson came from Impact, that was cool. That's really cool. Tony Khan. He needs to stay off TV. He needs to stay off TV.
Where is he on? He only does that 3-minute segment on the.
That's 3 minutes too much.
I like that. That's weird. It's cool to hear your take on it, but I like it. But yeah,
he's terrible. Hey, do you see how he stands here? Look, Jason, come on now. He stands here like this, and you can tell he's pushing his arms out to try to make his arms look a little bigger. Come on, man.
Maybe he's doing that on purpose. Maybe he's doing that on purpose. Maybe that's just like he's trying to act like he's a tough guy. Like he's trying to be like, you know what? You've opened the door. I didn't even know I was the forbidden door. But now I know, and now you get to come and see what you're dealing with. I don't know. Maybe tomorrow somebody's just going to show up on Dynamite that is going to surprise you. I don't know. You have to check in. You know, I like that. I don't know. I feel like I agree with you. Now here's my argument to you, and I agree. My counter argument is that if he did more than that, 3-minute segment once a week, he started injecting himself into the storylines and into the promotion, I would agree with you 100%. I mean, I don't want to see that because then it becomes like Eric Bischoff or Vince McMahon, and it's like I don't want to see that. But if he just does these 3-minute promo cuts with him and Shivani, I'm like, I mean, I do see what you're saying, but I find it amusing. I don't know.
I would have zero issue, right? I would have zero issue if he didn't look like a 9th grade biology teacher. Okay, like if he had some stature about him, if he had some swagger, he just looks so dang awkward, man. Like he does not look comfortable talking on camera. He's not good at talking on camera. If he had the mic skills and a little bit more of a physical look about him, I wouldn't have a bit of problem. But the fact of the matter is, he looks like Harvey Whippleman.
So let me devil's advocate here is that you would never know he even existed if you didn't watch that trailer because that never shows up on Impact. That never shows up on Dynamite. So unless you watch Impact or you're looking for that once a week to go to your argument with BTE, you never know that's even out there. So because he never injects himself into the program on Dynamite, or Dark for that matter or anything. So there's that. But the other thing is that as you said, he's uncomfortable and kind of awkward. I completely agree with that. But also, he's not a professional wrestler. He's never had any experience. Right. And so maybe he'll get better. Maybe this is an opportunity for him to kind of like maybe get better on the mic and get more comfortable in front of it. And even if he doesn't, I feel like it's so like you could take it or leave it. It goes back to like, right. But the thing I like is that if you do watch those things, you do watch BET, you watch Sammy Guevara's vlog, you watch Kip Sabian's vlog, you watch the Impact stuff, you see like, and it's like all together an entire week, it's about an hour worth of additional watching because it's like 20 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 3 minutes there, whatever, right? But if you put all that together, it makes the experience a little bit better for you. You kind of see other aspects. You see people's personalities, story progression, a little bit like Dark Order. I mean, oh my gosh, like Dark Order is it's amazing on that stuff. I mean, sometimes it's a little bit ridiculous, but sometimes it's hilarious, But the other thing I think about it is that if you don't watch any of that stuff, like you were saying initially, I think you still can watch the Dynamite, and you're like, you know what? You don't even know you're missing it. Maybe I'm wrong, but maybe that's because you and I both watch it. So you're like, wow, you don't really see that because like people might not catch that if they don't watch BTE, right? But if you're watching it, you don't watch BTE, you don't know you're missing the little pieces of that because the story still progresses enough and they fill enough blanks or holes to keep it moving forward. I mean, do you agree or no? Or maybe I'm wrong.
No, I mean, I don't completely disagree, but I guess I'm thinking more from the casual viewer because to me, I mean, you guys like you and me, if wrestling is on the television or if wrestling shows up on our guide, we'll watch. But those people are going to always be there. If a wrestling show's on, they're going to be tuned in. But right. If you're going to grow your company, you're going to have to start bringing in people that maybe used to watch and don't watch anymore. The only way to do that is to have, the TV product to be like the magnet that pulls people in, and you can't have them wondering, well, what are they talking about here? Like, I don't understand what their issue is, because the issue was started on BTE, or that's just my opinion, but
No.
yeah.
What about then, to talk about that? What's your thoughts are with, where do you think a story? How far do you think a promotion should go with story development before they need to have something happen to make you invest? Like, you have all these like little like vignettes where they're like, there's a lot of jaw jabbing, a lot of back and forth about two factions and two wrestlers wrestling, talking back and forth and talking smack or whatever. But then like, it takes weeks, maybe sometimes almost a month or two before you see any actual action. Like, as a fan, where do you need to see something happen that progresses the story? There's a bunch of jaw jabbing. Like, because I feel like if you've been watching the Sting thing, Sting was introduced at the beginning of December. Here we are at the end of February, heading to the end of February. So that's almost 3 full months. And not until this past Wednesday did we ever get an interaction with the Team Taz, with Sting and Darby. It took 3 months almost before we saw them even touch each other. So to me, it was taking way too long. I'm like, we got to move this story along. But what about you? Do you like the slow burn, or do you feel like if it's good storytelling, I think I can okay with it. But if it's just 1 or 2 minute segments of them just staring at each other and then that's it, I'm like, what's happening right now?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, man, right there. If it's good, then there's nothing better than a slow burn. I mean, if you think about it, back in the day when there were only 3 pay-per-views a year, and so everything had to be a slow burn, because you had you had the Rumble, you had WrestleMania, and then you had SummerSlam, and then you had Survivor Series. So there was 4 shows, and months in between. If you remember a little more recently, you had John Cena and The Rock came out the night after WrestleMania to announce that they were going to fight at the following year's WrestleMania. So that was a whole year of build, but it was good. I mean, it was good because it wasn't every week. So when you saw one of them come out and talk about the other, and then one week the other one would come out and talk about, to me, I like that. This is when it doesn't work. It doesn't work when you start having these 50-50 booking matches where I'm going to win half the time, you're going to win half the time. We're gonna be in a tag match, where we see them together, but they're not settling their issues, and it gets a little redundant and ridiculous to me. So it's all in how it's booked. It's all in how it's booked. I'm a huge fan of the slow burn if they do a good job with it and don't let too much physicality happen, but in a logical way. Not both of them in the ring at the same time, but yet nothing happens between them. If you and I have a beef, if we're anywhere around each other, then something's going down. And if it doesn't, then you're just rolling your eyes because it doesn't make sense.
And I think, and I agree with you. That's why I was like, I didn't think, and it was a good surprise, because if you watched Dynamite last week, they were in the ring again. It was Sting by himself with Team Taz, and they had done that same thing about 18 times this already, where they're like they're in the same building, they're in the same ring, they're up on the walkway, and one's in the ring. I mean, they're on the jumbotron, whatever. And it's like all these situations and like nothing's happening. So when they show up with Sting in the ring by himself, because Darby's still missing from the previous week or whatever, I'm like, here we go again. They're going to another jaw jacking and all this stuff. And then Brian Cage picks up Sting and gives him a most epic power bomb in the middle of the ring. I mean, that's a serious bump.
Dude.
And I was like, what? He picked Sting up like he was like Rey Mysterio.
Well, I mean, to me, you look at Brian Cage. To me, that's not the most impressive part of all that. The power bomb, it looked incredible. It looked vicious. It looked violent.
Yes.
But for Sting at his age to take that bump, to me, that's the most impressive thing. Holy cow!
Yeah.
He's over 60. He's north of 60 years old. He's north of 60 years old, and he's taking a power bomb from Brian Cage.
Right.
That's
it was epic.
Yeah, he about put him through the ring, dude. I couldn't believe it.
And then the great thing is like
sugarcoating it.
Oh no! And the great thing is like Sting at 61 or however old he is, like the camera kept showing like an above angle, and he was selling it the whole time. He's just like,
yep.
You know, like it never stopped. He wasn't like just kind of rolling out of the ring. Like a lot of these guys now, young guys, like once they sell it, like the very next half a second, they're like out of the ring or they're moving around. Like the storytelling again is like hard to do, and the young guys don't know it. And like Sting, like literally 1.5 minutes later, they're still like in awe, ooh and ah. He's still laying in the ring, not moving, and just like breathing, like, and I'm just like, and that to me is like, it's a little thing maybe for somebody who doesn't know about wrestling, but to me, he's like, if you get power bombed by a dude like Brian Cage and you're Sting, you're gonna feel that. That's not something you just walk away from. You don't get up and just be like, all right, I'm heading out now.
Exactly. That's the difference between a pro like Sting and some of these other jabrones that don't understand the art of selling. They're going to be up, in less than a minute doing full moves and not selling anything. So, I had something I was going to mention now, and I can't remember. Oh, here it is. Did you watch the movie The Wrestler with Mickey Rourke?
Yeah, with Mickey Rourke, yes, sir.
Because I know you're a lover of film. You're a lover of film, so you know how there's guys like that you kind of feel sorry for that just keep holding on, and you're just like, come on, man, that's just sad to see. Why isn't Sting that? He's not. But why is he not? He's still freaking cool to me, and I can't figure it out. Like if Ric Flair, and I know Ric Flair's a lot older, but if he got in the ring, I'd just be like, oh, bless his heart. But I don't do that with Sting. And I don't know why, but he's still freaking awesome to me. Like, I don't get it. I don't know.
I agree. I think there's certain wrestlers you see and they don't know when to hang it up, you know what I'm saying? And I think that's where you get that, because you can see that they're trying to do some of the stuff they were known to do and they can't do it anymore. Or, or that you could tell that the other talent is taking it easy on them because they don't want to hurt them or, whatever the case is. So, you have that. But I think people like Sting, like you said, luckily because he turned into the Crow Sting way back when, so he can still just has that aura around him. He wasn't like the Hollywood California Sting, woo, in the background and like, with the bleak blonde hair and all that. Like that would be kind of silly looking at 61 years old. Like that's not getting over. But the brooding, angry like Sting with the baseball bat walking around in the rafters, like you can do that, and it gets over. I think like you're like, oh shoot, like here we go. But it makes sense. But sometimes some of the characters you just can't like, I saw like they had like Legends Night on WWE on Raw or something. I didn't watch it, but I saw like clips of it. And they try to have the guys come out there and like they had stuff like Ron Simmons or whatever, and he's like, is that his name? Right? Was it?
Ron
and like
Simmons.
Ron Simmons, right. So what was the group he was in with BL? What was his name? Bradford? Was it
APA?
The APA, yeah. So, but like he get up there and then like he's like obviously he's in his 60s probably too. And like he just walks around and they just like go up to him. Something happens and he just goes, "Damn!" And I'm like, "Oh
that's
my
it.
god!" Like, that's it. That's all you get. That's all.
He gets a
and I'm
bigger
like,
paycheck than you or I get for saying one word.
Right? I know, but it's just like, you just kind of just scratch your head. And sometimes it's some of the stuff that these guys feel like they have to go out and do to get a paycheck or to And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like you said with Sting, I don't feel that way. Even with Hogan now, Hogan has to be like 70 or something or close to it, like late 60s. And, you know, I see Hogan, and I mean, I'm a huge Hulk Hogan mark, don't get me wrong. But now sometimes I see him out there, I'm just like, all right, man, like let's hang it up, dude. Like, you know, you know, I don't know. I agree with you, but with Sting, I don't feel that way. There's a handful of guys I don't feel that way with. I mean, next week, I don't know if you saw this, Tully Blanchard's wrestling next week.
I did not see that.
Yeah, he's wrestling. Him and FTR are doing a triple tag team with Jurassic Express.
Is he going to be able to hit that slingshot suplex again?
If he does, it's going to be with Marco Stunt. That's for sure. He ain't doing it. Yeah, he won't be doing that with Luchasaurus. Luchasaurus will kill him. Like he tried to pick him up. He's with his paw on him. But you know, Tully Blanchard, he kind of comes across that he still can do it. Like when he cuts those promos with FTR, the way he looks in the camera and the way he talks, he's such a great talker. I mean, he's like, you know, you believe if he wants to take off his jacket, he might kick your butt. Like you still feel that way. But you know, FTR comes across like that to me too. There's a handful of guys that still come across.
Yeah. FTR is kind of a throwback to the Tully and Arn tag team where they work body parts and stuff like that. Doubling back about Sting, did you know that he was originally supposed to be the third guy of the NWO?
Yeah, I had heard that. Well, did he choose not to do it because he didn't want to be a bad guy? Is that what it was, or what was the overriding reason?
I think that was the fear. I think that was the fear, and then Bischoff approached Hogan about it, and of course Hogan, his whole line was, you know, you never understand unless you walk a mile in my red and yellow boots. You know about it, how much the kids looked up to him, and how turning into a bad guy could ruin his brand. But he took a chance, and boy, it's a good thing he did, because that was wrestling wasn't any hotter than it was during the 96, 97, 98, 99. That was the best time.
Oh my gosh!
I'd be watching one of them live. Like I'd be watching Nitro live, and in another room I had my VCR recording Raw off USA. And as soon as Nitro went off, I'm in there rewinding that videotape so I could see what happened on Monday Night Raw. So I mean, that was just the best time to be a fan to me.
So who were some of your favorite WCW wrestlers during that time who didn't cross over to WWE until maybe later or whatever, but like were exclusively WCW guys who weren't going back and forth during that time? You better believe it. Bang!
There was no move hotter than the Diamond Cutter, man.
Oh man,
that move was so over. DDP was my favorite. He was my favorite WCW guy other than Sting, just because you never knew when he was going to hit that Diamond Cutter finish, man.
I love that Diamond Cutter too. I mean, I don't know who came up with the whole, like, you know, this. I mean, I don't know if that was DDP or Creative or whatever, whoever was whatever. But that was like, I mean, you know, sometimes it's like the most simplest thing, like you said, puts people over. And as soon as you saw him do that, man, and then if he tried to do it and he didn't get it put in, like something happened, somebody interfered, or somebody, you know, they played possum and they got him, and you're like, you felt gypped. You're like, man, he didn't put him in the Diamond Cutter. What? So yeah.
Also, because there were so many versions of it, he hit it out of so many different positions.
That's true.
He would throw him up in a fireman's carry and spin you around and drop you. He put you up on the top rope and he hit it from the top rope. But I'll take you back to when DDP was a made man. It was a Monday Nitro in the Louisiana Superdome. And for a couple of weeks before, they had built up the fact that the NWO were courting Diamond Dallas Page to join, but he was going to be like the 7th or 8th guy that they picked. And of course, DDP was like 7th or 8th. You know, like that's an insult to me. And so he had a match with some jabron jobber, hit the diamond cutter. Well, here comes Nash and Hall out to the ring with a NWO t-shirt, right? And they get in the ring and they throw DDP the shirt, and he looks at it and he puts it on, and some of the crowds likes it, most of the crowd doesn't. He puts the NWO t-shirt on. Kevin Nash turns away from him and he's holding his hands up like, yeah, we got him. Scott Hall shakes DDP's hand and goes to turn away. And DDP just snatches Scott Hall. Boom, diamond cutter. Kevin Nash rushes him, throws him over the top rope, rips the shirt off. And that's when he was made, dude. From that point on, he was a stud. He was a made man.
Yeah, I agree with you. I remember that. Oh, my God. I remember being disappointed that he was getting ready to become a part of the NWO. I was like, no, not DDP. So,
but see, they even overdid that though, man. You remember? They overdid the NWO. It was like that was WCW's problem, is that they just kept trying to rehash the NWO over and over and over. And then you have the Wolfpack, and then you have the LWO, and now we're coming back as the black and white NWO.
And like everybody was in NWO. That's the crazy thing. If you like every single wrestler any new WWF wrestler was in the NWO. Like everybody kept showing up. Like everybody was over. It was just like, come on. Like they just got old, And like you said, they didn't have anything to they have no other stories to go off of. It was like NWO versus everybody else.
If they would have kept it a small group, and you're right, not let everybody in, they could have probably gotten a lot more out of it. But golly, maybe it makes me want to go throw some old wrestling on the TV and relive some of this, man. This is good stuff.
So, yeah, well, we'll go ahead and just leave it there, dude. We've been at it a little over an hour. I don't want to push too hard. We gotta leave a little bit of meat on the bone. So for a future conversation. But I appreciated, Joe, you hanging out with me, dude. I know it was kind of impromptu, but I had a great time. I hope we had quite a few people in and out here throughout the time, and had a lot of people just kind of chilling, watching, which is great. But hopefully we'll get to do this again, and maybe we'll watch some wrestling this week if we get some free time.
Yeah, man, just holler at me. I'd like that.
All right, man. Well, guys, thanks for watching, and until next time, we'll see ya. Peace.